Aloha and welcome to the Empowered Empath podcast. My name is Jennifer O'Neill.
And I'm Michelle Schneider, going to give you a friendly reminder that if you like today's topic, to please give the video a like and subscribe if you haven't already.
Yes, and you look very comfortable. I would like a couch instead of this chair. I feel like, oh, well, you're so comfy over there. I am very stiff in this chair. So
Well,
maybe
this is my filming room, and so I've got a couple setups, but I did just get this nice, like, velvety
it looks
couch. So,
so comfortable. So, anyways, today we are going to be talking about telepathy, um, children and telepathy, and we can talk about adults and telepathy as well. I know that's become sort of a hot topic. I've had a lot of questions about it. I thought it was a good subject to cover. And so that's what we're going to get into today. I'm excited about this topic because people ask me about it a lot. They think I can read everybody's mind since I'm a psychic. And I don't like to tell them I can for a lot of them, for the most part, because that just freaks everybody out. But
I always do this thing when I'm around you. I'm like, can she hear this thought? Can she hear this thought? Is she hearing me just like spinning in my mind?
well, I think that this is a good way to start the conversation because in a lot of regards, it's easy and it depends upon how strongly somebody's really in their thought process, I guess I would say. And then it also depends on how focused you are on the person. Like, are you giving them a lot of focused attention? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And am I tuning into, like, am I being very present with the conversation? One of the things that people forget as a human, as a psychic, as a nurse, as a teacher, as an anybody, we have a lot of things in our own life going on. So while that's super helpful in a lot of professions, and I was trying to think, what else would that be helpful in? But it can be helpful in a lot of professions, especially if you're trying to help in the healing world, because a lot of times what people say and what their energy is projecting are two different things. And a lot of times what you're receiving telepathically is also the energy that they're projecting. And it's interesting from my end of the spectrum how much that differentiates what people are saying or wanting to deliver as their opinions or fact or conversation when that's not really where they land. So I find that interesting. So then there's the fact of that, but there's also another factor that plays a big role, which is everybody is human, even if you can receive information telepathically, even if that's something that you've maybe naturally done, something that children do. We also still have our own stuff going on and our own thoughts. We have our own things that we're thinking about. We have conversations that we're having that we would like to give an opinion on or just be involved in, back and forth communicating. We have groceries we have to buy. We have a checklist on our mind. So we may be focusing upon other aspects of our life that are important to us. So there's that avenue as well. And especially, I know for me, and especially probably for a lot of us out there who do this type of work professionally, when we're off work, then we're off work. Like, we don't necessarily want to be tuned in really psychically on some things. There is a type of focus that you have to have at that time. To add to that, it is something that I think comes naturally to a lot of people like myself and like others and like children, in a way that there's an aspect of it you can't really turn off, but you can kind of tone down. You can tone it down. Then there's aspects where maybe you don't want to know what people are thinking. Like, there's that too. It's not always the best when it's like a spouse or something and you're just like, yeah, I really don't need to hear these thoughts right now. Like, I don't need to know what's going on in there, which is why people don't tell each other everything all the time.
Yeah.
So let's get into what telepathy is. because I think, and I guess I didn't really look up the standard version of it, which I guess we probably should have, so that
Would
we
you
can
say it's more so receiving communication or information non-verbally?
yes, that would be exactly what it is receiving communication or information non-verbally. Typically it comes through, your thoughts, your mind, your clairvoyance. You can have it claircognizance. You can have it clair. Why did
Did
I
you
just
say clairsentient
audience?
or clair? Yeah.
No, claircognizance, clairsentience. You can have it through any of the clairs. So it doesn't have to be received a certain way. I think a lot of people, when they think telepathy, they just think it all comes through the brain and it, comes through visually or something like that. But there's a lot of senses that work together to bring any visual components together and to allow you to have information that you can then translate and understand it as something that you've received. So, telepathy can be in forms of verbiage, it can be in forms of sound, it can be in forms of visual, like pictures. It can be in forms of a feeling. It doesn't have to necessarily be verbiage, which I think a lot of people think that. Yeah.
Yeah, and me thinking through some of the stuff where it's like I've been connecting to a lot of dots lately of my body sensations, like when somebody lies to me and I know that they're not telling the truth and I
Mhm.
get nauseous.
Mhm.
Is that a different form of telepathy? I mean, it's more of a physical
I
sensation
would say
of
that
like,
is a form of telepathy, but I think that when people think of telepathy, they feel like there's a very clear message behind it or
okay.
very clear information. So, what you've been struggling with when it comes to that is you're unsure sometimes of what they're lying about. You just know there's
Mhm.
deception there. I
Yeah.
feel like when people are entertaining the thought of telepathy, that there's some very clear information behind it. Like, for instance, I am lying to you about XYZ, or I don't
Yeah.
want you to know XYZ or something like that.
Yeah.
Like that you get more of a detailed batch of information. And so why I wanted to talk about that is because I think that people feel that it's a lesser gift or something that's more, what would I say, like harder to grasp or harder to work with, I guess I would say, but it's not. It's actually not as hard as people think. Telepathy and receiving telepathic information, if we're going to differentiate the two, where you can receive information, you can receive telepathic information, which might be more detailed information, that's just going to come with development. It's going to come with lowering your resistance to believing it's true. It's going to come with all of the factors that allow the information to come through purely the way that it's supposed to come through without you filtering it. So, what happens when people are adults? Let's start there. What happens when people are adults is we use the brain, as I've talked many times, the brain is a processor. It's not supposed to predict the future. It's supposed to filter through all the things that you've learned and help you to do things and move forward, right? So it's a processor, and so it gathers information based on historical events and experiences and things that you've learned, etc. And as it gathers information, it has filters. It has a filter system because it wants to categorize the things that you learn or the things that you're experiencing so it can help you make decisions moving forward. And that's where we can run into a problem when it comes to developing our psychic senses in a way that we're just receiving some information, to maybe a telepathic sense where we're receiving more clear information. And so it will start to filter, going, oh, you shouldn't know this. Maybe you receive something, you don't know this doesn't seem right, why are you thinking of it this way, etc., etc. It starts to put a lot of filters in place that starts to cloud the waters, and that's what happens as an adult. The interesting thing about children and animals, actually, for any animal lovers out there, they don't have the filters to stop and hinder their ability to use their spiritual senses. This is not something that they've learned yet. They're younger. So they naturally receive telepathic information very easily because number one, they don't have any of the filters in place. Number two, the brain doesn't have the history and the experiences of you shouldn't, you can't, you could never. It doesn't have that yet. It's not in place. And with children, especially, they're fresh from the other side. The way that communication takes place in the spirit realm, in the spirit world, is all telepathic, all of it. So while you can use verbiage, while you can use sound, and you can use other ways of communication, everything comes through telepathically. Everything. And people might say, how do you know this? I know this because I have very strong memories of being on the other side. Every time I astral travel, every time I've had experiences with spirits, I have very clear memories of other lifetimes of being, like I said, in the spirit realm and living there before that I was born, all the things. And so since I have such clear memories of it, it's very much a part of my wheelhouse and my knowledge because that's what we do on the other side. We're telepathic. We transfer information through energy. And that brings us to a whole nother layer, which is a lot of people being empaths and developing that ability to receive information through energy, which would be what people call an empath. So that's another gift, clairsentience. So we are born with none of the blockages, none of the blocks, and we are born just going, oh, this is what we do. Like, this is how we communicate. I've talked about this before. Babies don't respond to your verbiage, they respond to your energy. Toddlers, they start to learn a verbal language, but until they're older, until they really, I would even say, because most children, they really do respond to energy even into the teen years. They're really responsive to how it feels when somebody's talking to them. They're really responsive to what somebody's saying versus how they're feeling. And that's why I've also talked many times, I don't think on this podcast, but I've told other people when I raised my kids, I was 1,000% conscientious of if they said they didn't like somebody, or if they said that person makes me feel a certain way, like maybe they're like, oh, I really like that person. And I'm like, okay, there's something very cool about this person that they're picking up energetically. Or, oh, that person makes me nervous. Like maybe they feel like they're really loud or like that they're in trouble with them all the time. Then I absolutely, I would never, ever question my children. And I don't think parents should do this necessarily. I mean, you all know your children, so I would take that into consideration. But for in my world, I never questioned um, their thought process on it. I would ask them, okay, well, why? What do you think? I don't. And a lot of times I'd be, I don't know. They just make me feel this way, or I feel a certain way when I'm in their presence, and I'm like, oh, okay. Other times it would be, well, because they're yelling all the time and they just seem like they're never happy. That's a
Yeah.
whole other thing, which is still transferring energy, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's very important to listen to your children when it comes to things like that. But also, it's very important to parent your children from that standpoint, understanding, well, we're going to get into a whole nother conversation here because there's all kinds of things that affect children's lives that they telepathically can read. They know, they understand. Divorces, parents fighting, somebody maybe struggling through something that they're trying to hide from the kids. I tell people all the time, don't think you're hiding anything. They're just not bringing it up to you. It doesn't mean that they don't know. They absolutely know. They're reading energy all the time. This is their closest verbiage to them is reading energy and telepathic communication. That's what they do. Now, as they begin to grow up, toddlers and even a little bit older children, they start to say, no, that's your imagination. The parents, as in they, it's your imagination. You couldn't know that, et cetera, et cetera. Then that's when the questioning starts. And then a lot of times, children still form their own opinions telepathically, receiving information through energy, and they just don't tell their parents. Like, I've had that happen a lot with kids that I've worked with when it comes to helping psychic children and helping them learn how to live in a physical world, helping them learn why that certain energies make them feel a certain way, helping them be less afraid of their the things that they're seeing when their parents go, oh, what do you mean? Like, that's not, because that freaks kids out. And then they think they're doing something wrong or they should be afraid. So there's a lot of things that kids experience that they don't tell you either, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So do you have any questions yet on that? Because you're
I know. I got so many things going through my mind. But no, I'm just trying to think of like, I totally agree with all of it. And just thinking, when I was a kid and just how much I was perceiving and just feeling and picking up on. And it's just like, yeah, I don't know. I think it did affect me pretty significantly, just like, with the family situations, the dynamic that I had. And it was just
Mhm.
feeling the stress of everybody. And
Right.
then because of all that, I kind of wanted to make myself smaller. Like,
Mhm.
don't make a
Yes.
ruckus, don't make anybody mad, just be a good girl, don't
Well,
just
that goes on to the telepathic communication too, because they know, kids know when they're ruffling feathers, and when they're ruffling feathers, the thoughts that go through adults heads is, oh, why are they doing this, you know what I mean? And then they feel blamed because they know, they can hear, they understand that the parents are thinking these things, they understand all of this. They don't always communicate it with you.
yeah,
So yeah, they absolutely know. So they're very gifted in the telepathic area, children, all children. They're I don't even like to use the word necessarily gifted because it's just normal to them.
yeah,
They're very fresh from the other side. They utilize all their senses in the way that adults don't. In fact, I should have brought it in here, but that's in my book too, my Empowered Empath book too. I talk about that as well. So if you want to plug for the book, if you want to learn more about that and more techniques and things of that nature, that's in the book. But in the book, I clearly state kids do it better because they just frankly do it better. They don't have a stiff belief system, they don't have a stiff perception of all things. They're a lot more well rounded. They perceive things from a physical and energetic standpoint, spiritual standpoint. They are very closely linked to their spiritual body. They understand things a lot better than most adults do. And I think it's interesting how adults think that they do it all better when clearly they don't. They just have more knowledge and they have the ability to drive and they have bank accounts. And none of that means that they do it better.
yeah.
But that brings us to the autism in children.
Yeah, and I'll mention too that I think the reason why telepathy has become such a hot topic
Mhm.
is because of this podcast that has come out. And I don't know if it's being turned into some sort of like mini series, but it's called the Telepathy Tapes. And it's been kind of highlighted in several subjects where these kids who are nonverbal autistic are, communicating with their parents
Mhm.
telepathically, or they're picking up on their thoughts. And I'll have a few more follow up questions for you on that. But like, what are your thoughts on, is it anybody who's sort of autistic has these special gifts, or is it particular to stronger within the nonverbal?
Well, no, I would say that it's not necessarily stronger in the nonverbal. However, when other senses are shut down, other senses always heighten. And so, like, being able to verbally communicate is clearly one of your physical abilities. So, being that that is shut down, yes, other senses are going to heighten. Same is like if your hearing or your sight is hindered or compromised in some way, your hearing starts to become heightened. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I feel that the body, spiritual body and the physical body, are such miraculous things that their bodies adjust to these different types of communication. Hence, again, if somebody's eyesight is compromised, their other senses heighten. Absolutely, I do believe that that happens with autistic children. If they have other senses that are compromised and they're having trouble speaking and communicating in that way, 100%, they're going to find another route. They're going to naturally just move the direction of other forms of communication. And since they are, again, fresh from the other side, that just seems like a very natural form of communication, so they would absolutely gravitate that way.
Yeah, and so it's very interesting, and I'm only a couple episodes in, and you haven't listened to
No,
any
I
of
haven't
them at all.
listened. I've heard wonderful things about it. I think
Yeah.
it's amazing that she's doing all the stuff that she's doing to bring awareness to that. Yes.
Yeah, it's funny because they're like, people don't believe, people think we're crazy, and then it's just like, I'm listening to it, and I'm like, yeah, 100%. I was like, of course they're telepathic. Like this is, I was like, there's no question of like what's happening.
Right.
It's like they kept going on and on about how there's no like money to like fund the research and stuff, and we're like, why can't we just accept it for what it is? I mean, you're running all these experiments, of course it is. But there was a couple of things that were brought up that I would definitely love to get your hot take on, you not having listened at all to
No,
it.
I have not listened at all.
One of them was talking about one of the children, and they said that like they were so like the mind body was so disconnected. Like they had to keep showing them that they had hands and that
Mhm.
they had fingers and that they and then they're like, oh, I have physical, arms and stuff like that I can move. And
Mhm.
it's just because of that mind body disconnect. Like,
Connection.
are
Yeah.
they just fully in like the spirit realm? Like,
I would say now you can't, you're not ever typically fully in the spirit realm
or
without having some aspect of yourself
yeah.
to operate the physical body. If your physical body is moving and your eyeballs are moving and everything, you're plugged in because that's the battery to make the physical body work. So you absolutely can be more out of body than you are in body. And I've actually had that happen to me when I was younger. It's wasn't awesome for me because I can still communicate just fine. However, I can see how that would be helpful in some regards if there was a lot of, again, hindrance to the physical body that we weren't being able to express ourselves. You're going to naturally gravitate to the senses that allow you to express yourself. And so they most likely have spend more of their time outside the body and in the spiritual realm than they do in the physical body. And what happens, which is what I didn't love, is you start to feel like you're viewing yourself in a movie. I couldn't figure out what it was for the longest time, but it literally starts to feel like you're out of body, but you're being able to see through your eyes. It is the weirdest sensation. I absolutely cannot stand it. I wouldn't recommend trying it. But that very disconnected feeling, it can happen to even regular people, but I can see how you would allow it to happen and be okay with amplifying that to happen if you were having issues with the physical body. The other thing is people who are older and people who sometimes have dementia and Alzheimer's, or they're getting near the end of the road, they start spending more time out of body. And when they start spending more time out of body, now remember when you're with the spirit realm, you're shifting dimensions. What happens with, and I can imagine that this is the exact same thing with the autistic kids, is you start to form this ability to be in two dimensions at one time.
Mhm.
Now, while what everybody else is differentiating, they're moving from one dimension to the other. So like psychics and mediums are typically in our 3D dimension. They're moving to the other dimension. They're not overlapping and having them all merge together at one time typically. a lot of people can do that. A lot of children can do that naturally, and a lot of people who are older can do that naturally. They adapt this ability to be in both dimensions at one time. Some mediums have that ability. I actually am luckily able to control that ability, but I can be in both dimensions at one time. It's a very strange sensation because it's like your world is all of a sudden amplified or layered with a lot of other things that you can see at the same time that you have everything physical going on. So how would I explain that? I would always almost explain it like if you took two pictures and layered them on each other, like if you were doing like Photoshop or something,
Yeah.
and you could see one skyline and then you layered another photo on it where you see like the skyline and people and stars or something. It's like you get a fuller version, and it can be very confusing to regular people who are just trying to live life, because it's kind of like where am I supposed to be here? And you start to feel sensations on both sides. You start to feel the spiritual and the physical. So usually you want to pick a lane. And that's why I think a lot of them pick the spiritual lane, because their bodies, again, if they're older, they're kind of shutting down. They're not operating properly. With autistic children, they have trouble with their motor skills as well. So it would make perfect sense that they would then choose not the physical realm, but they would choose the spiritual realm to spend most of the time when they're seeing both dimensions. That's why
Yeah.
a lot of them, children and older people, will also say, well, so and so came to visit me. And you're like, so and so died like 10 years ago. Or, things of that nature. In their reality, because their dimension, their ability to see both dimensions at one time, that becomes their reality. Their reality is the spiritual realm and the physical realm layered together, you know.
Yeah.
But for regular people who both bodies are functioning properly, it starts to make you feel a little off kilter. And so usually you have to choose one or the other. So for instance, for me, if I'm doing spiritual work, I choose the spiritual aspect because I need access to that. If I'm just doing regular things, I don't want to be hanging out in the spirit realm. I just, like, if I'm going to the beach, I really kind of want to be in my body. I want to feel the sun. I want to have conversations with physical people. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So then you choose a lane.
Yeah, there's definitely some interesting things, and hopefully maybe you'll get an opportunity to listen to them. But the one of the things that I did think was quite interesting, they are able to communicate. They had tablets, so it's not
Mhm.
like they were, couldn't communicate at all
Right.
to these children. And they were saying, where I'm from, telepathy is the only communication. And
Well,
so
there we go.
yeah.
There
And
we
I was
go.
like, that's really fast. And they, people were just absolutely blown away. And I'm like, well, yeah, duh. Like,
Yeah. Well, that is because you're on a spiritual
I
podcast. It's
know.
that.
But the other thing that was quite interesting, as they're running these experiments, and this could be like they have a calculator and maybe the child is, across the room, and they're like multiplying these crazy long numbers together, and they're asking, what the answer of the numbers, as like the mother is like looking at them, where the information is coming so instantaneous, whether it's like before somebody could write a word down, and they were trying to break down like what is happening, like how are they accessing this information, can they see through the mother's eyes? But then I was like, I don't think it's physical like that. I think
No,
like
it's
it's
not like that. It's not
instantaneous.
physical like that. Remember, this is really funny. Remember the other day when I was talking to you about some things, and I said that it was going to be a 3 month time frame, or it was going to look like 6 months, but be in a 3 month time
Well, I
frame.
was literally looking at the spreadsheet as you were talking to me. I was like, can you see my spreadsheet? Like,
So what happens is we're tuned in to the same information. We're tuned into the same frequency. I just pull it out of there. When you wrote the spreadsheet, you're tuning in, your frequency is still tuned into the spiritual realm. And so I'm plugged into the same realm. I just pull it from there at the same time. So it's instantaneous. And that even went further into when I was talking to you about numbers, and you were like, that's literally on line 14. How are you doing this? And so, for those of you who don't understand what I'm saying, I gave her a number. I said it's going to look like this number, and she's like, "Oh my God, what is happening right now? It's I'm staring at this number on line 14." And then that's when I had to be like, "You remember what I do, right?" But that being said, we're tuned into the same info. Where you're when you're working with those numbers, when you're working with the things in front of you, that's also in your frequency.
Yeah.
It's part of the information you're feeding your spiritual body, your physical body, all of the things. And I can just tap into that and just grab it from there in like a millisecond. But you are also grabbing that information from somewhere, which is why it came through your brain and went through your fingers and went onto the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
We were tuned into the same frequency. So it's just, yeah, it's instantaneous, milliseconds.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
I think that that's what trips up a lot of people because they just don't understand, like, energy. And I remember, gosh, we never talked about it, but there was that one article that had come out where it was talking about energy and like it is like the greatest, like it holds like so much information.
Hmm.
And I don't even remember how it was worded necessarily because I'm not doing it justice now, but um just about people don't realize like that energy is literally everything and it holds like all
It
information.
holds all things of all everything that's
Yes.
ever existed since time and people and planets and universal energy has ever existed. Like, I mean, you can't even put that in a frame of reference to a computer. It's just not possible. It literally holds timestamps and experiences and information from every lifetime of every person, of everything, of everything that's ever existed. And I mean,
Regardless
we're
of
not talking
time
about,
too, right? No matter if it's in the past or in the future.
yeah,
Like,
there's no time frame on
yeah.
that. There's absolutely zero time frame. The energy holds all the info of all things that you've ever learned about in your entire life, and then take that times like a billion, like, because you're talking other planets, other planetary beings, other um all the things. Like, I mean, it's not just to earth and to people. It's not just your akashic records. It's not just everything you've experienced in every one of your past lives. You're talking about, again, all the other beings, all the other angels, all the other uh guides, spirit guides, like all the things that just exist at all is in energy. The information is there.
Yeah, and I think too, a lot of people who probably aren't well versed in like the in spirituality is just like thoughts are energy too, and I don't think a lot of people understand or realize that, and so it's like thoughts are energy. So if you can
It's
read
kind of like,
energy,
I
it's
don't
like
even think about it like you just said it. Not thoughts are energy too. It's thoughts are energy, but they're also thoughts. It's like they're energy first,
yes,
then they become verbal or visual.
yeah,
But the primary base of thought, all thought, is energy.
yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, I would like to continue this on, but we'll have to do a part two. So
Yes, and before we do part 2, if there are questions that you wanna know, or that you have regarding telepathy, please put those in the comments, and then we can incorporate those into the next and to our part 2.
absolutely. And if you have a subject that you would like us to cover, I would love you to put that in the comments section, because we would like to make sure that we're covering subjects that you find interesting. If you would like our thoughts on a subject, please put it in the comments below. So we'll be watching for that.
Yeah.
All right. You want to lead us out?
Yeah, and, if you like today's content, please give the video a like, and if you haven't subscribed, please do so.
Please do so, and we will see you soon. Have the most amazing day. Aloha. Bye.
Bye.